Well, look, it sounded to me like they're taking an all-of-the-above approach, which I think is exactly what they should be doing. They're not going to rely on one distribution scheme to try to get vaccines into arms. They're going to double down on trying to build new vaccination sites, use FEMA, get the government involved in supporting states and building out new vaccination sites, but also tap the existing supply chain. Go back to the independent pharmacies and the big box stores, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, that have vaccinators on site, have the capacity to move a lot of patients through, have scheduling systems, and start pushing out supply through those locations as well. I think that's smart. I think you've got to use the resources that are available, the full complement of resources available. They can't redo everything that's been done already. They're inheriting a system that's standing up. And so what they could do is wrap around it with new distribution sites. That's exactly what they're doing.
Meg, what stood out to you as far as the different steps that's going to be taken? And what could make a drastic difference here?
Well, the major difference is just the federal involvement here. Talking about federal involvement in setting up these mass vaccination sites in school gyms and community centers, getting FEMA involved from the federal level and not just making FEMA, available if the states want it and the National Guard if the states want it, but really having this be federally coordinated. Interestingly, we keep talking about 100 million shots in arms in the first 100 days. That's 1 million shots a day. We're doing maybe 700,000 a day right now, according to the CDC data. And, Secretary Alex Azar had forecast we'd meet 1 million shots a day within a week to 10 days. That seems like a fast pace, but we're talking about the end of April there. 100 million shots in arms. If we're still talking about these 2-dose vaccines, that's 50 million more Americans who will have been vaccinated. Yes, that's much better than we are right now, but that's still going to take us a long way to get to herd immunity. One more thing I'll mention that I was sort of surprised not to hear about in this plan is just some sort of government national sign up or, something to make it easier for people to figure out how to get their vaccines. And I know that they talked about more government outreach and more public awareness campaigns, and maybe that gets wrapped into this. But I think some of the frustrations right now for people are just figuring out how to sign up to get a vaccine. And I think a lot of people will be looking for making that easier if there are going to be changes in these plans.
Dr. Gottlieb, does prioritizing the first dose make sense to you rather than getting both doses done?
No, I think we should stick to the FDA labeling and try to get both doses in patients and get it into patients with the schedule that's been prescribed by the approval. The initial challenges were with the distribution of the vaccine. Now that we're getting the distribution challenges solved to some degree, they're starting to get solved. Now you hear states talking more about supply and the supply constraints that they're seeing. I think soon we're going to pivot to demand. I think that we're going to recognize that the demand here is deep but not wide. There is a cohort of people who want the vaccine very badly. But then beyond that, because there's so much friction in the system in terms of the steps you need to go through to get the vaccine, there's going to be a lot of marginal patients who might have gotten vaccinated if it was accessible and easy, but probably won't. And I suspect the issue with getting 100 million vaccines done in 100 million days isn't going to be the supply and it isn't going to be the distribution. It's going to be finding 100 million people who are willing to go through the hoops to get this vaccine.
Obviously, the market, investors are looking to the end game here, to herd immunity, getting back to normal. If you take Dr. Gottlieb, Israel as an example, which a lot of people are hailing for what is going right when it comes to distributing their vaccine, I think they've vaccinated almost 20% of their population at this point, and yet they are seeing record hospitalizations, record cases, and going through a third lockdown. Does that we're 3% of our population now vaccinated? Does that suggest this is going to take a lot longer and that we could be going into the summer with very high case numbers here in the U.S.?
Well, Israel's grappling with these new variants that are more contagious. We're going to be grappling with these new variants. They really changed the equation. I think they changed the game when it comes to the vaccine. What we're likely to see is the cases start to decline. I think we're peaking right now. We're starting to see declines in new daily cases. Hospitalizations and deaths tragically will lag. But as cases decline into the end of January, into February, that new variant will be gaining traction in the United States. So rather than seeing cases continue to decline, we may see them tick back up again and settle out at a steady state of a lot of persistent infection into the spring and maybe even into the summer. So we never really get out of this because of the new variant. The only backstop against that really is the vaccine. That's why it's important to get as much protective immunity into the population as possible. Israel has seen that among the vaccinated population, they put out data recently, they're seeing less cases among the vaccinated population, which is what you'd expect. and less forward transmission. There was some data out of their health insurers. But they're also now grappling with this new variant that's much more contagious. And so that's going to blunt the impact of the vaccine.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.